This episode is brought to you by Are We Friends Yet? Which is my book, which I can't believe exists out in the world. You have heard me talk about the wheel of connection and the roots of friendship for years. Bits and pieces, episode after episode. This book is where it all lives together. Are We Friends Yet? Maps your entire support system, who you have, what they give you, where you want more. And by the end of the book, you will have developed a real personalized plan for how to build the connections you need in your life. Now, if you buy the book and you submit your receipt before July 16th, you also get the Connectors Toolkit, which is a bundle of bonuses that I put together just for you. To find out what's inside the bundle, head to the show notes. And P.S., there's a link to order the book there too.
Hey! Alrighty, gang. Here's to nights that turn into mornings and friends that turn into family. Cheers!
Hello. Welcome to the Friendship IRL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Alexander, and each week we explore what's working and what's not in our friendships, community, and connections. Have you ever wished you could sit down and have a conversation about what is really going on in your friendships? Well, you found your people. Join us as we dive into real-life stories and explore new ways to approach these connections. Together, we're reimagining the rules of friendship. Have you ever been hanging out with a friend? Someone that maybe you've known for years. Someone you have so much history with. And it's a great hangout. You're having a good time. Things feel normal. And then something happens. Or maybe they say something. And it's just this micro moment in the overall hangout. But you have this moment where you're like, wait, what? And then the hangout keeps going. And most of it feels completely normal. You're laughing at the same jokes. You're talking about the subjects you normally chat about. It feels very familiar. But maybe another small, kind of like micro moment happens. You leave that hangout, you go home, and although it felt normal and you had like such a fun time with your friend, part of you just can't shake those two little moments that happened during the hangout. And you start to think to yourself, is that who I'm friends with? Like, this doesn't feel like my friend. It feels like my friend has changed, but also maybe not, because like 95% of the hangout felt completely normal. But that 5%, you just can't quite shake it. Today's episode is not a friendship breakup episode. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody blew up the friendship. There was never some big confrontation or fight. In fact, the friendship is technically still there. The person you're friends with is probably still in the room or still in the group chat, but something is off and you can't quite put your finger on it. And here's the thing that I don't think gets said enough. It would honestly be easier sometimes to be friends with someone who is completely different than you than to grieve this. And what I mean by that is, if you became friends with someone who, let's say, upon getting to meet them, you realize very quickly, oh, their political beliefs, very different than mine, right? Or their lifestyle, very different than mine. You go into that friendship knowing that, you kind of build your friendship around it. Maybe if your values just don't align, they're never going to be your closest people, but you can coexist with them in a group setting. You can push back when there really is something that you just feel like, wow, we need to debate this. If their lifestyle is so different, you hang out with them in certain settings, but maybe when they're going on like those big trips, you don't go. You're not surprised. But when someone that you have felt so aligned with for a long time starts to shift, And it doesn't really feel like a good shift. And you're left thinking, how did we get here? And what happened? When you have been friends with someone for a long time, you have built up what I call a lot of roots. Now, a quick overview. For anyone who has not heard episode 12 or who's not picked up a copy of my book, Are We Friends Yet? Both of which are linked in the show notes. Roots are this concept that I use to talk about what is holding our friendships together. There are 3 types of roots. The most basic overview is that shared experience roots, shared interest roots, these are the ways that you spend time together, the things you do, the topics you connect over. Emotional intimacy roots, these are the details, the things you know about each other, the big and small intimacies you collect, your shared history, your memories. And then the third kind is what I call story roots. These are your beliefs and expectations about these friendships. Here's what happens. When you have been friends with someone for a really long time, you've accumulated a lot of roots, decades of roots potentially. And maybe some have died or withered in the past. I go really deep in the book about this, talking about how friendships change over time. So for example, let's say when you were college friends, right? One of your shared interest and experience roots was maybe going out to the frat parties all the time. And now, if you're friends a decade or 2 later, that's probably not a shared interest you have anymore. And your root withered, died, changed. And now you hang out at each other's houses in the backyard for barbecues. You go on walk dates together. You joined a movie club. You play poker with the neighborhood. Things have shifted. Things have changed. And you were able to adapt to that. Like, it's very normal for roots to die and wither, and then you grow new ones if you have been friends with someone for a long time. But I think that sometimes there are the changes where it happens and you're just kind of like, wow, this doesn't even feel like growth. Like, something feels so off here. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're at a hangout and 50 things happen that feel familiar. 50 things feel like the person that you've always known, always been friends with. But there are 5 things that just don't line up. Something they said that surprised you, a value that surfaced that you're like, wait, we've talked about this before and that's not what you thought. Where did that come from? A way that they show up that feels off. And this could have come from anywhere. I think something to note here is that this could come from actually a place where they're also struggling. So if somebody is, let's say, in a situation of abuse or addiction, it could be making them say or do things that do not align with the person you have known for a really long time, but they're also struggling. That's why I say, like, it's not that they're necessarily a bad person. Another example could be that maybe your friend has been hanging out with a new group of like work colleagues and they've never valued just like monetary success stuff, like accumulating the big house, the RV, the car, the boat, the more. Maybe that's just never been how your friendship is. And now they're saying things that make it sound like that is suddenly something they're really striving for. And you're just like, wait, this is not ever who you've been. It could be some sort of ideology. Maybe this is a friend who went and stayed with their great aunt and uncle for the summer. Like, they went and stayed at their beach cabin somewhere and are coming home talking about things ideologically that you're just like, never has this been you. Where did this come from? So when they say those 5 things at a hangout that for the most part feels normal, but those 5 things just are not. This episode is brought to you by Slowly, a digital pen pal app. You know how I'm always encouraging you to push outside your normal friendship filters, to not always make friends who are in the same stage of life, same background, same zip code. If you're ready to step outside your norm, then Slowly is the tool you need. Over 10 million people are using Slowly to exchange letters with people all over the world. So you have endless options for new connections. Here's the thing. If you're somebody who gets anxious about new connections, this is incredible practice. Writing gives you time to think about what you want to say, but Slowly takes this a step further. Letters don't arrive instantaneously. The further your pen pal lives, the longer delivery takes. We might have found the only modern platform where there's zero guilt for not responding right away. So, if you're ready to add someone new to your wheel of connection, someone you genuinely never would have met otherwise, download Slowly today using the link in the show notes. You'll get 30% off Slowly Plus for an ad-free experience, better search filters, and more. Now, I'm off to go find my new pen pal. Will it be you? I think you feel sometimes a little crazy because you go home and you think to yourself, wow, so much of that felt familiar, but there are a couple things that just underneath the surface, I don't think I can ignore those. And maybe you do. Maybe you ignore them for 1, 2, 3, 10 hangouts. But at a certain point, this is just becoming a pattern where every time your brain is latching on to these few things that just do not feel aligned for you. And obviously some roots have changed, right? Some details you know about your friends have changed, but not every root has changed. Here's an example of like a change I would consider a very normal change, not a concerning change, not one that would hopefully, I think, set off any alarm bells for you. I'll use like a personal one, right? If a friend who used to love chocolate chip cookies, but has recently found out they have a dairy allergy, that means that you can't bring the favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe you have always brought to their birthday party for the last 15 years. Because if you do, they can't eat them. So they're probably going to be a little like, ooh, I guess thanks for remembering the cookie recipe, but I'm kind of sad because it's my birthday and I can't eat my favorite cookies. And I'm already having to deal with this lifestyle change because I have a dairy allergy. That is a root, like a detail you know about a friend that you need to let die and replace with new information, right? You have to find like a new way to surprise and delight them. That's just an update. That's just something new that you know about them. That's a root adjusting. But that I think is different than when something really core is shifting under the surface. A value, a pattern of behavior, something that feels harmful to them or to others. That is a different thing entirely. That is still a root withering, but the fact is it's like so disorienting because it is happening inside a friendship that still has so many familiar roots. You're not starting from zero. You're watching something change inside this friendship. Well, 95% of it still feels familiar. And I think some of us feel a little disoriented. You know, I think we can gaslight ourselves a little bit and say, no, it's fine. I'm just being dramatic. But I think if it happens enough, you should listen to that gut feeling. And I think that this is a very specific kind of grief here that doesn't really have a great name. Because it's not the grief of a friendship that ended. It is the grief of watching someone you love become someone you don't fully recognize. But the friendship is still there. But the person you became friends with, you're not really sure they are. And you're not really sure that this new version of them feels very aligned for you. So this could be, like I mentioned earlier, a friend that you are really worried about them dealing with addiction or something harmful. It could be a friend who went through something traumatic and came out very different, but like not in a positive way, you know? Maybe they came out and they're just kind of mad at the world. And they used to be a really kind person. And now, honestly, they go out like looking for ways to mess up somebody else's day or wreak some havoc, right? They feel like they aren't in control, so they want to cause some chaos for everybody else. It could be a friend who maybe hit a really big life milestone that they were working towards. They got married, they had a kiddo, they released their book, they got that job they finally wanted. Let's use that one. I like that example. They made VP of marketing. They've been working so hard for this for a long time, but they're 6 months into this role and they completely feel like they have lost their spark. Like the life got completely sucked out of them and they just can't quite figure out how to be themselves like they used to be. And I think in any of these situations, the slow creep is the hardest part because especially if you see this person regularly, you're catching just like the incremental shifts versus if you don't see this friend for 6 months or a year and you get back together, then you might walk up to them, chat with them, and you're just like, whoa, you are a completely different person than the last time we hung out. Instead, if you see this person regularly or you talk to them regularly, you just have this slow accumulation of very small, wait, what? Moments. And at some point you look up and you realize, I don't fully know who this person is anymore. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is you're allowed to grieve that. Even if your friendship is still technically intact, even if nothing happened, you're mourning a version of a person, and I think that's real. So once you've sat with that grief for a moment, you do eventually have to decide what to do with this friendship. I think you have 3 options. The first one is a friendship demotion. You don't end the friendship, you just stop actively pursuing it in the way you once did. So if this is a person that you always called to like get together with on the weekends, maybe it's not every weekend anymore. Maybe it's a couple times a month. Maybe you find some other ways to connect with some new people for yourself, right? You like add some people into your world. Maybe you suggest that this friendship, you and this friend join a running club together. And that's really actually where you spend most of your time now, is maybe more in a community setting. I think this could especially be a great way to handle this if this is somebody that you think is struggling and you're hoping that they will get themselves out of the abusive situation, that they will actively pursue help for their addiction, that they will get whatever help they need. You want to be around them, you want to be available, but you can't make somebody go to rehab. So you would love, like if they told you they wanted to go, you'd be like, get in the car. I will drive you. I will check in every day. I love you so much. But they aren't in that place yet. This might, in my opinion, be a great way to like shift this friendship. You're not initiating as many like deep hangouts, one-on-one hangouts, but you are still actively trying to see them in a way that feels a little bit more sustainable. The run club example, right? Your hangout would be really focused on the run. It would give you something to talk about. It would give you something to connect about. And if this is something you're interested in, I did an entire episode about friendship demotions. It's episode 45, and you can head there. Your second option would be what I call a friendship pause. Now, this is not a manipulation tactic. This is a temporary, intentional step back. I would only use this if you want to invest in this friendship long term, but you feel like whatever pattern you and this friend are stuck in, it needs a moment to reset. An example of this, I had a friend who was really struggling with some family stuff, and every single time we got together, that was pretty much all consuming for our hangout. And this probably happened for about a year. And finally at the end, we had talked about it so many times. Finally, at the end, I kind of had a very direct conversation with her. And I just said, hey, I feel like you are really struggling with this. We have talked about it in so many different ways, and it feels like it's the exact same. And I think because I listen to you all the time, you keep coming to me with the problem, but I actually think we need to just take a month or two and not hang out. And you need to find somebody else who is maybe going to give you better tools or advice, or a therapist, a professional, like somebody who is going to help you get out of this cycle. Because I can't do it and it's really draining our friendship, but I want to be friends. We set a date that we were going to connect again. Again, this is not a punishment. It was breathing room for us to try and get out of this pattern. I go into this more in episode 136. And then your final option is ending the friendship. Sometimes the change is so significant, it's harmful, it's unsafe, that you decide this just isn't something you can continue. And that is a very valid choice. And it's also allowed to be sad, even when it's right. There's no wrong answer here. You can pick whichever one feels right to you, depending on what changed, how significant it is, how it's impacting you, what you want out of your life, which is why I can't tell you to just do one or the other. I think it really is a self-reflection type moment. Now, you're going to spend some time mourning this change, and that's okay, that's appropriate. But something I like to talk about a lot is, instead of being 100% consumed by the loss, because I think that can happen to people. I know it's happened to me when I've had a friendship breakup in the past. I like to talk about the idea of adding something to your friendships, to your wheel of connection. So my suggestion to you would be to think about what you loved about this friendship before the shift. What did it give you? Was it the person you could call every day? Was it one friend in your life who completely understood a niche interest of something that like you feel like nobody else in your life cares about? Was it someone that you just genuinely felt aligned with? Was it a friend who was always down for just kind of a random adventure and they made you feel spontaneous and fun? Was it a friend that you got together with every Tuesday night to play pickleball and that was your chance to get out of the house, forget about the pile of laundry and the dishes and the things, that was your like 2 hours a week to just play pickleball and take a deep breath. Whatever that is, you still deserve that in your life. So what I always like to say is that instead of being really entirely consumed by losing it, like absolutely take time and mourn the loss of it and the shift and the change. But I think if you spend some time getting clear on what you're actually missing, it is easier to keep your eyes open for somebody who could be a part of that in the future. I'm not saying you're going on a mission to replace this person, and you're absolutely going to have to mourn the end of that friendship, especially if it's someone you were friends with for like decades and you decided to end the friendship. This isn't a like forget about all of this and replace it. I'm not trying to be no toxic positivity here. It's just that when you've spent a little time mourning this friendship, if you can spend a little time reflecting, then it is easier when you walk out into the world every day, that maybe when you're talking to someone and it's like a friend of a friend and they're talking about how much they love pickleball, you might have found someone you can connect with and recreate that in your life, because you deserve to have that type of connection if it's what you want. And I think that you are way more likely to find what you are looking for if you even know what you are looking for in the first place. I really hope today's episode maybe, validated a feeling that I think we've all felt. I know I have felt this in a variety of intensities. Sometimes it's really subtle and it kind of passes. Sometimes it feels all consuming and it really does feel like I have to make one of those three choices about this friendship. I think any friendship changing is hard, but the honest truth is that every friendship is changing all the time. And unfortunately, even if it's a friend we've had for a really, really long time, we don't get to control all the changes. There are two people in this friendship, and if the other person has some sort of shift in their life, you can be on the receiving end of it. And I hope this episode today maybe gave you some ideas for how to manage being on the receiving end if that happens to you. So with that, I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of Friendship IRL. I am so honored to have these conversations with you, but don't let the chat die here. Send me a voice message. I created a special website just to chat with you. You can find it at alex.chat. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle at it's Alex Alexander, or go ahead and leave a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. Now, if you want to take this conversation a step further, send this episode to a friend. Tell them you found it interesting and use what we just talked about as a conversation starter the next time you and your friend hang out. No need for a teary goodbye. I'll be back with a new episode next week.